And we are going to add one agenda item, which is separating out our meetings and finding dates and times at the end. Don't need an amendment on that or anything because it's a work session. So first up, we have budget revision discussion.
Okay,
Dun, dun, dun.
so originally, every January is the time by state statute, we have to revise, or you don't have to revise the budget, but you have the opportunity to revise your adopted budget by January 31st. It was past practice when I came to management that we would always do a budget revision, or that they've always done a budget revision, and so I continued with that. Okay, so we have the opportunity. I've continued with that. Looking at the numbers this year, we really don't need to revise the budget. We could absolutely change some things and move a little bit around, but ultimately it's not necessary at this time. So there's no need to do it.
Susie, can I ask, sorry to interrupt as you get started, but I mean, is there a certain like threshold where you would not revise, or there you would say you don't really need to report out to us because it's under 5,000, it's under 10,000, it's only a certain percentage of our overall operational costs?
Yes and no. I mean, we don't have an actual number.
But you have something that you'd recommend perhaps?
Yeah, not a number. So there's a couple of things. If I'm seeing, in this case, I'm seeing revenue come in higher than anticipated. So I don't really feel like we don't need to revise that because we're getting more than we did. And it's not substantially higher. If it was something substantially higher, I'd absolutely want to do it in right size. But just a little bit here and there, not a whole lot. Really, it's a wash from some loss in state funding, and we'll get into that in a second. That's offset by a grant that we got. So it's just moving it around a little bit. And then expenditures, if we were coming in a lot higher than our original budget or higher period, if I was doing a projection that thought we would exceed budget, then I would do it. The one cushion we have is we appropriate our reserves too. And so with that being said, it's not ideal, but if we were to go over our actual budget numbers, we have those reserves available for us to go ahead and spend without having to come for a budget revision because we already appropriate that extra money. Does that make sense? So we have kind of a built-in cushion anyways. We're not gonna hit that. So it just didn't seem absolutely necessary to do it in this sense. But yeah, I mean, 5,000, I don't have like a number.
Okay.
But I went through the entire process. It could have actually been done. It was already all done. But then there was a couple extra things and it just didn't seem super necessary. We do have the opportunity at the end of the year in May or June to do a supplemental budget. So in that case, if we were coming in, the only way you could do a supplemental budget is if you have increased revenue. You can't just say we're going to spend more money. So we need to do a supplemental, but if you have extra revenue that's causing extra expenditures, then you can do a supplemental. The one fund I'm thinking we may possibly want to do a supplemental on, and we'll get into this in the quarterly report, is nutrition services. And we'll talk about that there. Okay, thank you. Okay, so here's just our general fund summary. It has not changed. This is our adopted budget. So I just put this in here. It's still leaving us at the end of the year with we're spending down some of that fund balance in there, but still have a substantial fund balance at the end of the year, just under 5 million. Our revenue, so this is what I was saying, we had that loss in student enrollment and a couple other, our per pupil went down a little bit. And so we're going down in the state equalization. We're not going to be bringing in as much money there, but that's offset by a grant that we received right at the end of the year after the adopted budget in the summertime. So after we had already adopted the budget, the school health professional grant, which is a 2-year grant.
2 years, and extend, but for now too.
Yeah, so that offset, but overall revenue is right in line. And on the School Finance Act, they're working right now on a supplemental. A lot of that is truing up the at-risk counts, because with this free and reduced, or with the free lunch program, people aren't filling out their free and reduced forms as much. we still did a great job of getting those filled out. So really our numbers don't change substantially. They are like some districts where, I mean, we're generally around like 33% free and reduced. I think this year we're at like 30%. So we're right in line. They true it up to get us to more normalized levels, but it really wasn't a big change for us. Our general fund expenditures are aligned with our adopted budget. The one thing that might go down is our transfer to nutrition services because they're bringing in a lot more revenue, but they don't need that subsidy from the general fund or as much of that due to the free lunch program right now.
You want to go next one?
Is there another? Is that it?
That's it.
So is there any questions on not doing a revised budget? We'll keep, yeah.
No, I'm just gonna say, I don't know where it's written or whatever, that we have to do a revised budget, but can we, I mean, can it just be left if you sit there, you don't come forward to us, that's, we're good to go.
Yeah, I've never, until I came here, I've never done a revised budget ever before. And it just was common practice. So I would say districts probably split doing it. And I understand, like, when you do it just to right size it, but it's a lot of process when you're not really that far off from your adopted.
And the only way I could see you really having to do it would be as a great
Exactly.
expenditure came up.
That's what I think it's for.
You came to us and said, I've got to add another 500,000 to the budget.
Yeah, something totally unforeseen, or like, we didn't anticipate a huge drop in enrollment. I mean, then you go into the averaging, but something like catastrophic happens where funding's gonna change, or we've got huge expense needs that we didn't have. That's more of when you would need it. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? All right, so then now, quarterly report. Okay, so just like we talked about every quarter, the top is this year, the bottom is last year. The general fund looks a little different this year. If you could look at last year, our revenue's down. We're at 35%. Typically this point in the year, not quite 50, but close to about 45% is where we'd be. But that's because we budgeted that ESSER or ESSER3 money that we haven't received yet. And so we have that's a $900,000 budget that's in there. We just haven't received it. So we're not receiving it in the, monthly traditional annualized format. So that's why that looks lower. And then we have the same thing for our expenditures. We're a little bit lower than normal, but that's because we haven't received some of that ESSER3 money. So we haven't spent that ESSER3 money. We applied for that in December. We haven't heard anything back. We're hoping to at least hear something back soon, because all of these ESSERs for all the districts, you're not getting just a go ahead, right? When you submit it, they give you revisions and you make the revisions. So it's kind of a back and forth process. So I'm hoping we hear back and get a little guidance, but I know that the turnaround at CDE has been a little bit slower for them. So hopefully we'll get that soon so we can spend a huge chunk of that money this spring, but we do have it segmented over a couple of weeks.
We know the superintendents that are in our UPass postings, they've submitted as well and also haven't received it. And as you know, a third of that is connected to the one-time stipend for employees. So we're holding on, moving forward with that because we want to just make sure it's all done. But we're trying to keep staff updated as we go.
The next one is our insurance reserve fund. This one is fully funded by a general funds transfer that we do at the end of the year, and all of the expenses pretty much are front loaded with just a couple of claims costs here and there, but most of it is our premium that we pay in July. So we're right in line there. The next one is this is our nutrition services fund. And so we have brought in so much money in this fund this year, which is crazy. This federally funded free lunch program is great. And our kids are really, like, what Paula and her team do is amazing. And we are getting more and more kids. The numbers keep going up. So kids, like high school kids, are staying on campus, not going to restaurants around there, eating their lunch. And you get a much higher reimbursement rate than we ever charged kids for. It actually just is going up again, another 25 cents a meal, due to the food shortages out there. So we're getting good money in there right now, and that's where I'm thinking that we may not need that full $150,000 transfer that we usually do. I don't think we'll need any of that. On the flip side, our expenses are a little bit higher. So this is the one fund that we could have done a revised budget for this fund because we are seeing projections a little bit higher. But because we're gonna have so much extra revenue, we can do, if we need to, come May or June, depending on how things are going, we could do a supplemental budget just for this fund at that point in time because of the increased revenue. But they are experiencing a lot of food shortages. They've adjusted their menus like crazy because certain things just aren't available. Then is our grants fund. This is a reimbursable, everything entitled reimbursable. So we spend it, and then starting in the spring, we do reimbursement requests for that. So we don't have any revenue in there right now, but we're right in line with expenditures. And the next fund, this one is a little different. We're starting to get revenue because we didn't get, pretty much for the last year and a half, we really hadn't collected any revenue for our athletics and activities because we didn't charge gate fee and things there. But our expenses were way down. And so they're back in line with, if you compare them last year, we look like we're spending a lot more. But compared to traditional years, we're right in line there now that we have full athletics and activities back. Yes, it's nice, the kids seem happy. Perfect. And then this is our last one, and this is capital improvement. Again, this is 100% funded by a general fund transfer that we do at the end of the year. We're a little bit lower on our expenses this year. If you remember, we put in kind of a little cushion in a couple areas because we weren't sure what would happen with the bond and wanted to make sure that we are still tackling some things. We put in a contingency account, which thank goodness we did, because I don't know if you guys know about the mold situation at Manitou Elementary that happened. We had some greenery on the walls that the watering system kind of didn't work, and molds happen in a couple of classrooms. And it's been a process. Our Spanish teacher was displaced from our classroom for
The water seeped through the brick and into the walls, up and down, from all of nutrition services all the way to up in that space. So that mitigation has taken some time.
definitely taken some time, but we've got it going now. But capital improvement was able to fund that, and we had a contractor that also donated services to finalize part of the project at the end. So that's good, but they're still lower. But like we always talk about, they either do projects right at the end of summer or June, and really May and June, and these breaks, like they have a lot planned for spring break, so that's when they'll really get in and get some stuff taken care of. Any questions? All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Susie.
Thank you.
Policy review, GBEB.
Yeah, so introduced this just last month, I believe it was actually in the session, and wanted you all to just take a look at some of the red line edits here. They're pretty substantial, honestly, and I wanted to also give you all an update. Susie and I talked with the attorney was that this last Friday? Yeah, and we talked about the RFP, and then we talked about how the RFP needs to be looked up differently in terms of I want to be really careful about not talking about anything that we talked about in executive session. So the RFP that we put out, which is public, and it was nobody picked it up. And actually, as I think I mentioned, the attorney said it's better for us not to run that RFP because it could, at this time, because there are 2 of these prior arrests, we don't want to interfere with any kind of litigation possible or anything there. So what's in our conversation with John is that we'll be working with a firm, potentially Coulter's. She's an attorney up in Denver. She's with Kaplan and Ernest. And we would contract out with them via John Stanik's firm. And they would essentially do a policy review. And so, and they would also potentially do some focus groups with staff and with students around. What do you know about Title IX? How do you know how to report? with parents around mandatory reporting. So I just wanted to give you that update in there. One of those policies that we would look at would be this one. So I did let them know that we're going to start to just have the conversation. It doesn't show up in the board meeting because this is really just a dialogue around some key questions that you might have, some things that might come up, and wanted to see if you all have any feedback to this. As I said, it's pretty substantially different.
And it came from a CASB template or other districts template?
Yeah, it came from another districts, and actually, District 20 had some, this is not District 20's, but it had some connection there, steamboats and some others across the state. This came out of it is from some districts.
And obviously our attorneys already looked at it. Must have.
The idea is that we would get some philosophy perspective from you all, like what feels right or feels hard.
We thinking more of the tone of it as well as ideology, philosophy, or
Yeah, so for example, when I look at page number, let's see. Like when I look at page number 3, that general standards paragraph. This is language, but I think this is language that's been vetted by other districts' attorneys. There's still some subjectivity there. I'll let you read it and see if you'll have any thoughts. So when I think about physical and emotional boundaries, what emotional boundaries, that seems like a hard one to keep there. And I think it actually creates a grayer area. And so I don't know if you all feel the same about when you read that language. It gets unpacked further down. But to me, this is extremely subjective. And let's think about our athletic trainer. They do need to make contact with a student, but it's the appropriateness of the position. Just love to have a dialogue around this.
yeah, some of the wording, I mean, the word intrude on students' physical or emotional boundaries unless, right? I mean, intrusion on the physical or emotional boundaries is an odd phrase.
Yeah.
And a phrase to me doesn't sound like very legal. And then I have to admit, when it goes down to the appearances of impropriety 1, 2, 3, and 4, I feel like I could play devil's advocate on any of those. I think, 1 seems pretty self-explanatory, but 2, 3, 4, I feel like there's problems with all of those, or could be.
Yes, and I think some of the learnings that we're having had some of this been in place maybe, and some of the things would not, at least, it could have been at least addressed through policy more specifically. So I agree. It does get appearances of impropriety get further unpacked a little bit further down, like
Yeah.
where people can get invited to, if there's a school club, and there's other children there.
Maybe hard to write a perfect policy
Yeah.
around something like this.
So you can't cover everything, but I mean, even the phrase, except for communications concerning an individual student's medical academic privacy matters in which state of communication would be copied back to the school principal. I found that odd that the school principal would be involved with medical or academic, maybe academic, not so much, but medical. I would think that would be, I feel like parent or.
Sorry, where is it? Do you know which one?
I guess I'm trying to project circumstances in which some of these things would be necessary. And then also, you know, how is this aimed at our most concerning issues, targeted issues, things that would be most.
I'm wondering too, I don't know, if there's a way to put something in here that's like, if you are following these professional things and something inappropriate happens and you're not able to, whatever happens, and you step back and go, holy crap, that shouldn't have happened. There's a way to be like, report it immediately so that we're aware, and we're aware that you know, that this, I don't know, however that, so that there isn't
A quick,
like, you know, you're not gonna be punished because you're this is little people, but like, you gotta tell, I don't know how to say that without.
Because sometimes if you're in some of these situations
Right.
where it says to avoid it, I mean, I'm just thinking when you coaching, you get back to the school late, nobody's around, you're calling everybody, their phones are off, you're sitting here, everybody gets ticked up at you and the student, and you're like, hey, let's just stay till midnight till someone comes and gets you instead of plopping the kid in the
and
car.
it's snowing.
And then like, you know, you text everybody and you're like, this is what's happening, but you know, you don't actually get a hold of anybody. I mean, especially, you know, young teachers, especially young inexperienced teachers are just gonna be like, oh my God, I'm not gonna sleep tonight. I'm gonna drive to my principal's house. Like, you know, what is the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish in developing a policy?
Yeah.
Right? Like, which is be professional. We have boundaries with kids. Note that these things are unacceptable or are the appearance of being unacceptable. And these are the ways, as Natalie's saying, if like, again, you realize, whoa, this just happened and this was not okay, I need to report this, who do they call immediately?
Yeah, and maybe it's somewhere, I know the duty to report is really falling more under mandatory reporting, but maybe it is.
But maybe it's
You have a
not
duty to
mandatory, yeah.
report when you were, a student came into your classroom and you tried to get out of there and you were in that space for 5 minutes and you got out. And we went and reported that because what we don't want is this ultimate fear that there's been a crime committed because a child has been in the classroom for 5 minutes and the door closed, you know, and so how do we?
So I like the boundary violations as they're more clearly delineated, and have seen that in other policy lower down in this reading, rather than the appearance, the 4 things under the appearance of impropriety. If you're asking for more specific feedback, I think the appearances of impropriety in those 4 muddy the waters, so to speak, but I think the boundary violations are very clear.
Because it later on goes down, like for number 4 on page 3, it says visiting a student's home unless visits. It also does, I think, a nice job of understanding that there are times when people have relationships. Is this the poly? Sorry, I've read so many. Yeah, it says there may be circumstances where there's an appropriate pre-existing personal relationship, family, friends, or whatever it might be. And it takes too long to get there because the appearance of impropriety is right at the start. So we can take a stab at that. So maybe for now, strike through, and I'll leave it as strike through for general standards and appearance of impropriety. That really is covered further down the boundaries. And attorneys will look at it as well. Principals too might have some thoughts around this sorry.
I guess I just look at it and I see it here and then I go down below and I see it again. But sometimes some of the dealings I've dealt with is more is better. You know, because you're gonna get somebody that's gonna be questioning, well, I didn't read it all the way down here. Well, if you read anything in here, you're gonna see that this is not appropriate. And just because you haven't got to number 6 yet down at the bottom, you've been explained to you up here, the brief scenario that this is unacceptable. You're out of here. So that's my opinion. I like more. But
So you're saying leave the appearance and propriety things in there.
yes,
As examples.
Because I think you're gonna get somebody that say, went down that road and is somebody that does this kind of thing. I think you're gonna have to have more in there than less, because they're gonna try to fight you anyway. You've got all this in here. I don't see the thing where they can come back. And hopefully this will never happen again, but
Yeah, hope's not a good strategy when it comes to things of this egregious nature. I hate to say that. I think actually it can though complicate situations when there's things that there's so much and in different categories. It does feel like on a reading that there's a lack of continuity in some of the subcategories, and then the information under each category could be melded to, it feels like several different policies have been copied and pasted when I read through it. So just, again, not to get into the weeds, but to think about that. I would say, again, I think the ideology, philosophy, spirit of this also just isn't, don't do these things. It's be thoughtful, especially if maybe you're not sure where the boundary is for sure. It's not going to stop all people, especially if they're predators, right? They're just going to be more cagey about it. But also that in the spirit of a safe community for students and all staff, that these are the things that we want awareness around. And if we have concerns, not that we're looking for, a red state that is thinking on everybody, but just to be vigilant about this, just like any other infraction, right? Be vigilant about how we, Colleen's shaking her head, no?
No, I'm just thinking in my own head.
Okay. Was that associated? Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, yes, for philosophical, big picture, balcony view feedback, that's what I would say, is that the continuity of the policy, think about that. Because sometimes people, especially if they do have a resistant personality, will want to fight little pieces of it. And I think we want to attack the big issues that we do not want to see, and that we certainly want people to have a good understanding that this is reportable, this is unacceptable, you should question this behavior.
On the appearance from Friday, it does give kind of Natalie, not really Natalie's out, but Natalie's comment at the bottom of that, if not pre-approved, the employee must report the occurrence to the appropriate administrator. It seems possible, that goes to your point, if you're the coach waiting for the last kid to get picked up, you actually can't stay till midnight because you can't be on campus with the student after the last administrator leaves the school site.
They're mutually exclusive activities.
So then you're stuck.
Yeah.
So you just have to leave the student.
But I think that might be, I think to put it in the middle there, again, this gets into my just fluency of the policy, is that then that could be somewhere at the end, that if given the nature and seriousness or potential seriousness of these, activities and behaviors, if the staff member finds themselves inadvertently, whatever legal ease, right, please, and then where's the out? And the out is contact your supervising administrator or building administrator as soon as possible. Immediately creates this frantic belief. So anyways, right, we don't want people frantic.
Well, and I look at this date of this adopted, it's 2011, that's the current allegation, because everyone's innocent until proven guilty, is 9 to 11 timeframe. And so when you think about, I think that's what our community is really going to be looking through, how have our policies changed in light of the circumstances. So what I can do, if y'all are good, and if there's I know Dustin, you have some thoughts as well, is take another go at this. But like I said, Coulter, Bump, potentially who would contract out, she can look at it too and say, you've missed another piece of this from that second lens as well.
Well, I think it's, thanks for that, it was when we look at this, we can look at recent events, and we're looking at this from someone, in a situation that has some validity and that we're pursuing recourse and so forth. But we also need to look at it with balance so that we don't have so much that it is hanging a policy on every staff member of every day because you're inadvertently going to walk into one of these situations. So I'm just saying, from our perspective of policy, that it is balanced and not necessarily overblown, but accurate. probably back to Tina's point of being concise and well balanced.
I think, and this is an aside, with a lot of work around navigating gray areas so that it doesn't feel like everything is a problem. There are times when you're gonna get an email and you're thinking, oh gosh, what do I do with this? I need to go and talk with someone. How do I navigate this student's email or whatever it might be? But making sure we have productive and safe places for that to happen. And I think that a lot of the work around, it's the educator code of ethics. It's not educator code of conduct. There's a lot of work around the educator code of ethics. And so if you look at one side to the other side, and there's the gray area is much bigger than other ends. And how do we make sure we're navigating productive dialogue to where if it's going to this end of a red state, we've prevented that from happening. I think that's my best hope through policy is that, and maybe we can even include something around ethics of the profession.
Because I don't think we want to contradict the sense of relationship and belonging. I think this is where sometimes teachers do get caught, especially coaches, people who stay after significantly. You know, we talked about, you know, restorative practices, and we're not trying to get kids to then divulge private things to us, but at some point, when somebody may be acting out in your class and you're going to the root cause, like we talked about, someone may blurt something out to you or divulge something to you, very personal, very private, right? And then we don't want teachers to be like, oh my gosh, they just told, right? We don't want to put them in this stressful situation between, I care about this kid, I want to help them, I want to go above and beyond, but I also don't want to get in trouble. So I think all of our policies have to not be congruent within themselves just, but congruent with each other. So we don't cause that kind of dissonance for our staff. I remember as a young teacher, I coached pep squad, not because I wanted to, because I had the two and it came with the job, right? And how many of my cheerleaders did I take home or pick up or, you know, come to my house and feed them because they had nowhere to go and needed a quiet place to study. I could never do that now. Teachers could never do that now. But again, you know, how do we spell out for them what they can and can't, because they are caring individuals and we are a tight-knit community. And as the policy suggests, there may be times when people, you know, and then how do we help them bridge those boundaries?
Because there are absolutely lines that cross that is unacceptable, but what if there's a lot of things that are not unacceptable, but as we know in grooming behaviors from a lot of the
That's how it starts.
the grooming just starts in a little, let's
But I
go here.
think
But
that goes back to Natalie being transparent
I
and telling
agree.
someone, you know, if you're my supervisor, hey, just so you know, so-and-so's been coming to me a lot over some issues. Just want you to know in case, you know, you hear anything or somebody sees anything, like this is what's going on, and say upfront and be proactive about it.
no, we've had a lot of conversations with staff before, and I think they're I don't say excited about not having the conversations, but having the dialogue to talk about it as professionals and being proactive. And I don't think others have had the same wanting. I know from a lot of our coaches, this is an important topic. In fact, Cameron, Jesse, and Anna and I met afterwards talking about overnight trips and making sure there's two students, at least two students in a room. And I don't know, Jesse, there's two chaperones, never just one chaperone, just to make sure that there's another adult who can verify what was going on.
Yeah, and your point is very poignant. We have relationships being in our core values, and so we don't want to circumvent our relationships to be safe. But so one of our duties is to define and update this policy, but two is to explore what it means. So examples and working together, what does this look like? Because oftentimes you find yourself in a position when it's too late. Oh, how did I get here? So how do we foresee these things? And also how we see others. So when, like we were using as examples, boy, this teacher and this student are together an awful lot. And someone notices that, they can raise awareness.
Yes.
Because I think that is another thing at play here is you know, I think we've all heard see something, say something, and that would apply here as well. So education and normalizing what to look for and what's okay, what we don't want you to stop doing and damage relationship, but what we need to do to protect and be be cognizant of the goings on in our district.
Well, thanks for that feedback. I'll work on that and move forward with the other part of the, we're really kind of looking at it more as a management assessment of where, what is, like I said, what do students know about Title IX? What do staff know? What do parents know? I'm going to get that summary report. Soon as I've asked John to start it as soon as possible. Thanks for that time.
And then you're gonna present the executive limitation, 1.5 for us.
Yeah, just wanted to go through this executive limitation is around our communication with each other and with the board. So, so this is for the entire monitoring year as we've unpacked it, the interpretation there. So maybe coming off of our retreat, is there, not that we would change the interpretation, but is there interpretation that we want to look at for next year as we build out this particular executive limitation? I'll read that and we can see if there's something else you'd like to consider. Of any of them, I think this is the most straightforward, to be honest.
I was gonna say the same thing, yeah, agreed.
So we continue to work through our relationship. I'm really happy that we have a board that came back intact. I think we'd like to move faster together because of that. I think the retreat was an example of that today. Support the board meetings, board renewal requirements. We do those things. We submit Colorado Open. We respond to Colorado Open Meeting X as needed. I don't have we haven't only probably received this last year 5 max. Other school districts receive sometimes 5 a day. So I continue to work with the core team and leadership team around our making sure they're informed. The board is informed as well. We have our crisis management plan. Try to notify you all of newsworthy events. There's been significant events recently, of course, and of course through COVID as well. Continue to do the monitoring reports and executive limitations for as well. We follow the meeting agenda. I think that has been really important for us. What we'll do in the summer is make sure it's aligned to our plans for how that might work. I know we made an adjustment for executive limitation, moving one up, and that, I think that was productive. Let's see. Board minutes are posted. Thanks, Kendall, for your hard work there. There's been more meetings than typical, so thank you for that. Pandemic reports, tried to put in some of the situations around how you all have been notified. The ballot issue, I think just the communication ongoing. We did a lot of work around that, and that connects to other ELs. Surveys to the board as requested, and policy revision that we're doing. Respond to you all. Read portions of coherence. We kind of stayed away from an actual book study, but we also participated in board retreats, continued the work of the DAC, board meeting communications, and invite you all to things as they come up. So that's the scope of where we are, and that's we want to continue to look at communication of the board with the next action plan, the board with the community. So I look forward to adding that as a future step. Any questions about that? Or comments?
Questions from the board? Thank you. Yes. Calendars.
Yeah, so that's it. You can for the public, that'd be fine, thanks. Yeah. So we have 2 calendars, and Susie and I and Eric have been talking about, and Marcia as well. We adopt 2 every year with the board's approval. We think it's actually, we should have 2 already adopted every year. And so next year we should add the 24-25. The board policy or the administrative policy says will have two every 2 years. So the interpretation for several years would be to adopt two. But we believe it's too late to adopt now for August. People are already making plans for spring break next year. So if we always have two current, that also falls within interpretation within the policy. So are y'all okay with that sort of approach? And of course, if anything changed in education, we can always look at a revision of it. So pretty much everything is very similar to what we wrote on this year. And one of the discussions in the DAC, and they brought it back to their either schools or departments, was do you want more time before New Year's break or after New Year's break? And so the DAC in calendar 22-23, you'll see that there are a few more days before the 24th. I'm careful not to make it about Christmas. It's very important. I think that also came up in our board meeting. But just looking at where these holidays also happen, any holidays around that time frame. These holidays capture some, they don't capture all. But so that in that calendar, the board, or excuse me, the DAC subcommittees, they went to consensus and they voted on having, because it's really on the back end looking at New Year's Eve. So the staff would have one day on the Monday, and then they have 2 days of professional development. So that's that. And then the other calendar, a little different. It provides more time after the New Year's Day. So where it breaks off. So that was a discussion. We haven't done this before in this way. And they came back and they went to consensus on these breakdowns. Just want to give you that background. Because you're Eric, Chris, you're in the DAC as well.
Captured it.
It meets the state's legal requirements, right? Okay, then.
I think they appreciated having some
say in it. I do too.
It's one of those things that it really, to me, doesn't matter where it happens.
Yeah.
But it does for other reasons.
We don't have a calendar committee, so we thought that was a good.
Yeah, well,
Let's bring it
usually that has to hear it from the calendar committee or the subcommittee anyway, so.
So we just want to give you an update on the best applications. So Susie and I met with Matt Wilhelm and a few others from Wimber. On Friday, we went to Wisconsin into elementary school. Looked at the front entryways, because that's a big part. We talked about secure entryways, roofs, and also potentially folding in some mechanical parts so we can maybe have a higher bond package, even though our match is going up. However, having a higher bond package, so we're working on that. That deadline is the 4th, February 4th, so we won't have a meeting before that. Tina will have to sign for that application before it's submitted, but we can have a way for you all to kind of review it individually if you'd like to have some feedback. But our real goal is to try to fold in enough that's reasonable and that the best board doesn't think it's too much. So where's that sweet spot for the bond, the best package?
We met with Cheryl. She's our representative from CDE and Capital Construction. So we met with her a week and a half ago to just kind of talk through and make sure we were in line with what we were proposing. So that's kind of, you need her buy-in, and she actually speaks on behalf of the district. So that was a good conversation to start.
And then on another note, our subcommittee for the DAC, this capital improvement subcommittee, we met just 2 weeks ago or so. Their plan was, they really talked about, we need to make sure we have a true perspective of what the middle school staff understand or want or desire. They're the ones who are going to experience the biggest transition here. So that came from the subcommittee. We reached out to Dustin the same day, and we scheduled a meeting. So Susie and I and the DAC subcommittee members went to Manitou Middle School. We presented, kind of took version 1.0 sort of off, just talked for now. 2.0 would be, as we talked about just a couple weeks ago, This becoming all middle school, this building being repurposed completely, and then us still moving down to the middle school. And then PE would still be down there, upper activity field would be created. So we talked about that. And then we talked about 3.0 being a renovation, a complete renovation of the middle school, which would mean you'd have to shore it up with the ground being really fully invested in, making sure it's not going to move and it's completely stable. Matt's running some numbers, but looking at between $2 million or more around that. So as we were discussing these potential options, we did a survey for them around where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And it broke out that 61% of the 13 respondents, and we knew they weren't all going to be there. I asked them to report for the people who also maybe they represent. So for example, special education teacher and other paraprofessionals. So 61% of those staff said that they feel like the middle school campus should stay where it is. And some of the thinking, and Dustin was there as well, is that still this campus could be very nice. It still would almost create 3 campuses for middle school, which could even be harder. So you have Silk, you have middle school, and then you have upper activity field. Whereas if you really we invest significantly, the cost to the middle school would increase significantly. Then it's this building wouldn't change very much, and then we invest a lot, but we'd have to shore up that money in a significant renovation at the middle school. So I just share that data with you. Not that it changes our best application. I just wanted you all to have it now, and I'm happy to share the comments from the staff with you all so you can see it.
What was their, I guess, main reason for saying, okay, we're gonna build a new school up here? No, I want to stay down there. What was?
Yeah, because we still can't tie in the gym up here, and it still became feeling like a separate town. And that became a really important point. Preston, did I miss anything else there?
I think I talked to a couple of staff members who just appreciate the ability to collaborate at the middle school right now because all the classrooms are very close together. It's just one loop essentially. And so that's just a positive of the current building and some of the feedback I got, and not wanting to lose that in the new space.
I think the one thing we heard, that we heard from one teacher and then thinking a little bit more, none of these options are the perfect solution that allow all the middle school staff to be in one space together. So, if they moved everybody up here, then the PE teachers would be down there in isolation from the rest of their staff. Right now, we have a few teachers that are in isolation from their staff because they're here. So sure, they get to go down there, but they don't see them all of the time. And so obviously the perfect solution would be to have them all in one building somehow. But that was probably the one thing I heard, and that from all of the different options we've talked about, and we've never have really had that one option of get everybody in one building.
And bottom line is we still need square footage. And so if and we're going to talk to Matt, like I said, this doesn't affect the best, which I think was good. We're focusing on the other 2 schools. It gives us a little time. Is that if we can shore up the middle school foundation, it's possible that we could maybe build a bit of remodel and kind of go up a little bit more because we do need itinerant space. That will increase some cost there as well. Special education, they're sharing like 6 staff are sharing a room that's half the size of this. Barack's still in the basement, and so are some others. So we still need extra square footage if we could figure out a way. And they actually, it's the first time I heard that several of them say we'd like to actually move from the Silk to the middle school. So that was something that was interesting. I don't know if we can make that happen because that's a lot more square footage and that's building up, but I think we should consider those options. Just wanted to share that with you all. This was a productive conversation that came from the DAC.
How many staff are we talking about that are splitting time between the high school and middle school that we need to move down?
4 middle school teachers who are in the cell right now.
And are they all performing art or are they also special education?
They're all exploratory teachers.
Okay.
And we did say that if we built a pathway that went basically from my office, if we built a pathway down, you actually could have another seating area. There could be some stairs that go down, so it's much more connected. That loop is really like hard for kids. I mean, it's
Hard for me. It's like, see,
So if we could make it a straighter pathway, they may feel a little bit even though it's not the same building. Just the things.
hard to bear differently.
So the, I can exploratory, so those are all music, is that right? Or
There's enough art, so we have a choir, band, orchestra, art, and then our careers and construction class.
And choir is the only one that's a shared teacher with the high school. The other three are fully.
Middle school,
Middle
okay.
school.
Okay.
The band teachers, the high school and middle school band teachers share a room. High school orchestra, middle school orchestra share a room, so we only have one band space, one music space for both schools.
So really, we're confined by space as much as we are, right, less by staffing, more by space. Okay,
Yes.
because we could open up more sections then, am I correct? If then we had that space because we have the staff already. Okay, thank you.
We'll work through some potential drawings there or some planning there, but just wanted to share that with you all. That was important.
And I think only 13 people replied. That means there's probably not like an overwhelming groundswell of, we got to move. I would think. I mean, that's an assumption, obviously, but.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know if other conversations ensued after that dialogue at all. Yeah, we can follow back up as well, but yeah, it's like somewhere saying, there's pros and cons to both, and they both kind of had a hard time.
Yeah, it's
Choice.
I'm curious also when we get out in the community here from families if they want, and I mean, I guess I felt like we heard a lot that people are like really kind of hesitant about 6 and 6, the middle and the high school meshing. I mean, I certainly work with schools that do 6-12 all the time or K-12, but our community says, no, I don't like it. They don't like it.
So just kind of first another bit of data as we kind of move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, just want to share.
Do you have a ballpark number what the best grant's gonna be? I don't expect like down to the penny, but is it like 2 million, 5 million, 10 million?
I would say a range.
7 to 9.
For this one, I would say about 3.5 to 4.
I was gonna say 3 to 5.
Mhm.
Somewhere in there.
If we could get it to 4 and feel confident that the best doesn't think we're just throwing everything in, I think if we can raise it as much as possible. Thanks.
Is there a way to forecast the percentage shares of best grants since they increased on our bonus this year?
Oh, I bet we have a good shot with our match being increased. Is that what you're asking?
Well, no, I mean, we're required to pay more in our percentage now than we were in this time of the bond. So is there any way to forecast what that's going to be, how that changes? What are the factors? And
We asked Cheryl the same question, and she actually said last year we should have been at 72%, but it was some calculation that they missed and they had us at 65%. But it goes to assess valuation, your mill levies, how much your voters are contributing on the mill side. So if they looks like you're funded better by voters, it kind of drops down a bit. Susie, is there something else you want? No. If it looks like your community can pay for it, then you might not get matched at a lower rate. Is one of the factors. Sorry.
I should have paused that whole thing. So if it's 4, our match should be about 12. I mean, just rough, instead of 72%, figuring 75%. So kind of rough numbers, okay.
So it would be bringing something to the voters, not a large amount, but it's better than. Thank you.
Any more on that? Okay, invites to late start Wednesday and school visits.
Yeah, just wanted to continue that, see if there's some late starts. There's, we're gonna be doing, as you have the agenda from the last meeting, what's coming up. If there's a morning that works for you, if you just want to say, hey, I'd like to just go and walk the school sometime. That invitation is always open, and I know there's really great things going on in our schools.
If you guys want exciting, I mean, I'm just gonna say, please focus your eyes on Wednesday, March 30th. I'm just thinking, if you have not had the joy of sitting through this mass training, I feel like nobody should go without that once in a lifetime. Just saying.
Except for me.
Okay, all right. CMAS training, nothing better. You want to say why are teachers and other educators going nuts for it? Not so much.
So I just open that to you all if you want to do that. And then, for example, you'll see that first week is, or this week, you pass them into schools. High school are doing PLC, middle school is doing their 7 steps, PD and CSS at Mantle. There's not really less to do that from those lesson sessions and some searches. So Nancy Motley is going to be coming in and doing some mini sort of rounds, instructional rounds with middle school. So if you'd like to jump in and join me for some of that time.
When's that gonna be?
Oh, Wednesday,
Well, I know it's gonna be Wednesday.
all day.
This week.
Oh, this week.
Oh, sorry.
That ain't happening.
I know, I'm gonna have to look at March probably.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Whatever works for you all. Just, there's so many great things going on. Just let me know.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. What kind of notice do you need on that?
Oh, day before.
Okay, cool. Added another item to the agenda, which is everybody break out your calendars. Sounds like everybody agreed to my trial idea of February, March, April, May, and into June, breaking it apart. The work session and the regular session meetings to start at 5 p.m. Find 2 days a month. I would prefer if we can stay on Mondays because I generally have nothing going on Mondays. And we will agree to be concise, to the points, well prepared.
Going to a National Honor Society induction.
Yeah,
They
I know, I
couldn't
saw
find
that.
the better night.
Yeah, no. We get the invites, but at least I get the invites, so I knew that was going on tonight.
February's gonna be hard for me.
It's a short month.
That first Monday, I'm getting my wisdom teeth removed at 2 o'clock.
Oh, good luck. I want to impact the board.
That could be super fun.
Yeah.
Get it impacted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I haven't done it 15. We could, Mondays are my preference, but if we have to, especially in February, because we're just jumping into that, I totally understand.
It's a short month.
Currently, we're on the 28th, so I don't know if you can make the 7th or the 4th. I can make the 7th.
I mean, we can schedule it and see what happens.
You'd be entertaining. I mean, more entertaining, more than
Right?
that.
What if we just started in March?
You could, I mean, just also remember, I mean, no offense to if Natalie would say it if it was me as well, but we still would have a quorum, right?
I feel okay with that.
And these can certainly be Zoomed because obviously it's an additional meeting and it's a
You can
work
zoom in from your
session.
bed.
Yeah.
So they're zooming to make it easier.
Yeah, I don't think we want to get in the habit, but yes, I mean, especially for that kind of thing. Do you want to try the 7th and 28th?
Yeah, we can try. I mean, for me, it's prime counseling
Well,
times.
okay.
People, work, but it's, if I can schedule it, then I schedule it. I mean, because even if you move it to another day, it's the same issue for me. So
Is it better to be earlier in the day for you?
give and take, but yeah, I mean, that opens more for availability for sessions with clients,
Unless people
but
want to see you in the evening.
yeah, who are, the ones that are working. But
I don't want to take away your livelihood.
I know.
So, I mean, so I wanted to get just a poll. I mean, with notice, if scheduled, I can take off early to make earlier meetings. I don't know what everybody else's availability is.
I could get earlier if I knew.
And we say earlier, you mean like 4 or 5 or what time, right? Because.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
So like in those cases, I have a lot of 5 o'clock. I have a standing 5 o'clock Monday. So those get moved on nights
Got
like
it,
tonight.
okay.
And so then now I'll be adding another one.
and we don't have to do Mondays if we want to do another day of the week and keep this one on the calendar, but add one a different day of the week. I'm open to that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
really, you guys are all probably busier than I am. I mean, I have no social life, so it's kind of for other things. This is all I do. That and work.
I mean, Mondays ultimately are good. I just need to get them, scheduled.
All right. But is that going to be hard for you if you have a standing every Monday? So that means now you're rescheduling twice a month.
Right. But with enough forewarning, I'm trying to work out every option, because if I go to another date, then then it gets confusing as well. It might move fewer people on my end, but so yeah, I mean, I can stick with Mondays or look at, say Thursday, Monday,
I have to
Thursday.
do it Thursday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah, Tuesday, I mean, those are tough. And then I have another board meetings on Thursdays. They're usually the third. So if we can avoid the third Thursday,
Do you want, okay,
first, second, or fourth
can I
Thursday.
say first Thursday for a work session and keep the regular session on the third Monday? We'll throw that out there.
I'm good with that.
I could do that.
So we would start on the 10th of February.
That'd be the second Thursday.
Is it?
I won't be here for the first Thursday in March. My kids will have unexcused absences as well.
Write him up now.
I'll write on the record that way. It is what it is.
We're doing the 10th February.
I was only thinking of starting the 10th because otherwise we're only 1 week off from
Oh, good
today's
point.
meeting.
Yeah.
So if we could start on the 10th, and that's also, then we're not back to back with the community forum. So I'm just
That works
thinking.
better for me.
I wonder, do we shoot for this one, maybe 1 month in advance, because it might be hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not as busy as most people, but my schedule is just totally labile, so there's not really any.
So we want to
Rhyme or
start, do you
reason.
want to start with February 10th with the work session?
Can we do February 10th and then maybe at that meeting, figure out our next one?
I'm good with that. How does everybody feel about that?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, it'd be difficult. but-
No, that's not difficult at all. I think throwing this in, and I appreciate you guys being willing to kind of toy with this idea and how it goes. So I'm trying to,
And it'll be 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, is that going to work? Yeah.
Yep, that's good.
Okay, so
5
5
to
o'clock,
what?
5 to, do you want to schedule
5 to
5,
6.
5 or 30?
Look at what you said earlier.
5 to
6.
6:30, so that you have realistic expectations.
Which one has the fact that you're not-
Lowered expectations.
It's a work session. Can we do, we've been starting them at 4:30. Is that possible?
I can start at 4:30.
Yeah.
4:30 to 6, bam.
That does.
4:30.
So the lights go out at 6 o'clock.
And we can't all be with each other after that time without administrative approval.
Thank you for not, I think for us, if it would have been a Monday, that makes a long week, so Thursday.
Yeah. So maybe that is in the first or second, we'll clarify that. Keep that in mind though, as you're scheduling out, that we will look at Thursdays then for adding a work session and keep the Mondays as our regular session. We can do that. That'd be great.
The first Thursday of each month, possibly.
Yeah, let's kind of try and keep that. Knowing that holidays and school schedules often get in the way, but see how that goes.
So then we go to the regular meeting on
It'll be on the 28th because the
28th.
21st is President's Day.
So we won't, so now will those be at 6? Or will we start those earlier?
I mean, I'm fine with keeping them at 4:30. Is everybody keeping them at 4:30? You had mentioned 5, and I don't know if that's because it's hard for you to get here to do the.
I was
small
thinking
things.
just for attendees, like a little bit later for attendees than at 4:30.
How many, I guess, can we track how many people we are attending?
Yeah, most recently.
5 and 9, the most we ever have is 9. I'm soon. Then we have. Right now we have
If
5.
they have virtual pizza, but.
We have pizza delivered at all their
Delivered
houses. You
at home.
sign up for the meeting ahead of time, pre-commit. I'm good with that.
So 5 or 5:30?
For the regular meeting on the 28th.
5.
What do you guys say? It macht's nicht to me.
Because we're expecting that to be about an hour and a half, is that
We're gonna,
kind of the gestalt?
I actually think the board meetings will go faster and the work sessions will be longer. Is if we can move more to consent items.
Because we've already discussed
Yeah.
this 2 weeks prior.
So like probably work sessions would be more like 2 hours and board meetings would probably be more like, I don't know, I'm looking at Susie from. Because for example, in this model, I'll present exactly the limitations like I did tonight in the work session, and if there's any questions, and then you approve them in the next meeting for the, as a consent item. We don't have to re-talk about them.
Right, we won't present, anything that we need will be sent to us, we'll read it ahead of time, we'll have questions, we'll do motion, we'll do second, we'll do discussion, that's when we have the discussion over what you send us, and then bam, we move on.
Presentations would be like board presentations when we do our department presentations. So there will be fewer hearing things for the first time, that one meeting.
So the staff have to prepare for 2 meetings, though, then a month, then instead of one, they'll have to get out information, 5 or 6 days beforehand.
Twice a month, yes.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Still get 2 board packets.
So 5 to 6 for the regular meeting.
I'm fine with that, I'm super flexible. All the same to me, got nothing going on.
Yeah, that's good.
We can send out, or you can send out invites then for all the regular meetings, because those haven't changed the date, and then for the work sessions, we'll get a new invite for February 10th at whatever time we said.
Yeah.
4:30 to 6.
And then we'll decide the rest of our Thursdays for the next couple of months, even if they're not the first. Because, right, things change, it could be the first, it could be the second, but we'll keep it Thursday nights if we can. Yeah, yeah. Great, it's Friday. No, just me, less coffees, okay. It's not an action item. Anything else before we? take a
Yeah.
little break?
So if you haven't signed my grandma's 100th birthday card
Yes.
yet. sign
Item
the
number
card.
9, sign the card for grandma.
Thank you.
All right, adjourn, see you back at 6 or 5:58.